quick overview of system notes and audit logs. There are system notes, and they're fantastically detailed. Each system note basically consists of the same thing: a timestamp, the record that's affected, the person who's involved, their user role, which is critically important when we get into analysis of use of permissions, which is a big part of our SOD capabilities, the ability to use data to analyze who's doing what in the system. And then usually the field that's being affected and the value before and value after. And also the context, whether the change was made through the UI or through scripting or through some web services. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Some fields don't have system notes because they're just too big. That's not that common. It mostly relates to rich text fields. Some other things, the system note will be there, but the before and after won't be there because it's just, again, too big to represent. They track changes, not views. So NetSuite doesn't track when people are looking at things. They track when people are changing values in things. And depending on your settings, that can or cannot include the value of when somebody created things. We strongly recommend that if you're a public company, that you turn on system notes on record creation. Otherwise, you won't know who created transaction. Well, you will actually have a record that somebody created it, but you won't know what the original data was. It's a little bit complicated when you want to start doing analysis if you don't have that turned on. However, one challenge with system notes is that when you delete the record, although the record of the deletion is there, the system notes are no longer available. There's an extremely high volume of system notes. I'll give you an example. I just looked in our account in the last month, and there was 1.2 million lines of system notes in our account, right? And we're not that big of a company, right? So you can get very, very, very high volumes of system notes. So we'll get to some of the challenges that presents in a second. Of course, the flip side of it is complete auditability. The downside of it is extremely large amounts of data to analyze. And then, and the key thing to remember about this, and one of the most powerful features of NetSuite is system notes are not just available through a search of system notes, they're available through a search of relationship to certain records. Now, that's not entirely true around all the configuration records, because some of them don't have a record that's searchable in quite that way, but certainly for transactional data, that's true. And for many, many other situations, for many of the configuration elements, it's true that you can actually search the system notes in the context of the overall record, which is super, super useful. So this means you can compare, for example, look for a certain system note on only transactions that are large enough to be material. That's a great example of where you would use those two things together. Now, the other two most important ones for purposes of compliance are the analytics audit trail, which tells you about changes to save searches and reports, essentially system notes for analytics. Very, very similar coverage, very, very similar setup, but just covering these non-record objects, which are searches and reports, and then the login audit trail. This is the part of the system that tracks the access behavior, who tried to get in, how they tried to get in, when they tried to get in, which role they were trying to get into, whether they were successful, whether they saw a challenge, whether they were successful or not. Three ones that don't come up very often. The deleted record log does come up sometimes in audits, but the script execution logs, also called the server script log, tracks only what you tell it to track, essentially, right? So it tracks by default. It'll only track audit statements or error statements, but it won't track debugging data. That is a good thing. If you turned on debugging, you would get too much data. It can be directly written to using code. So you can have this cluttered with developer created information that's put in there. Not normally important for audit. It is very searchable, but it isn't permanent. It goes away. Workflow history and execution logs are essentially the same thing. Only relating to workflows. And then there's the deleted record log. And deleted record log does get some attention. It logs the fact of a deletion, but not the details of what was deleted. And so it's good that you know there's a deletion, but you could, for example, have somebody create something, remove it, and you would not know exactly what they've removed. And it doesn't cover customizations or setup preferences or anything that relates to the configuration of the system.